Um, all right, awesome. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Unlock Higher Education's monthly meeting. We'll get started in a few minutes. I just want to get some housekeeping in place. The agenda is going to be shared with you in the chat, and there's some great links on there that I hope you can access. And we have a busy schedule for you today. So we have a special speaker as well, and I will introduce that in a minute. But first and foremost, again, thank you for being here in this space. Unlock Higher Education is a coalition built of over 400 members that come together to speak of access to higher education for the currently and formerly incarcerated students. And so we speak on how to do best practices. We discuss our collaborative work and efforts that are happening at our local level, our state level, and even nationwide. So we have built a platform to discuss best practices for higher education for our student population. And so I am excited to, bring all these different and yet similar mindset individuals that are doing the hard work in our communities and in our spaces for access to education to all. And with that, we will first and foremost have a few minutes to discuss, actually to get to know each other. And we're going to be breaking out into little rooms, breakout rooms. And in there, we ask that you say your name, the location or organization that you're presenting, what brings you here to Unlock Higher Education, and share your stories. Because again, this is a platform of collaboration. This is a platform of discussion of higher best practices for higher education. And so we are here to connect with each other and learn from each other in our work. So we're going to take about 5 minutes to do so. We're going to be breaking out into rooms now, and I hope that you get to meet some new people, get reacquainted with some old people, and we'll discuss a few of those stories when we come back. And you will be now being sent to join your room. Welcome back. All right. Well, I had a great conversation with a new friend of mine, Emily, and she's doing some great work in Georgia. Their programs involves the welding, and they actually are taken to the facility to do the practice, which is amazing because it's kind of like a work pass, if you will, but this is an educational pass. So I'm glad to hear that. They also have other programs like cosmetology. So I'm seeing a lot more trends of not just degree seeking opportunities, but I'm glad to see vocational opportunities that sometimes are necessary for individuals coming home to be able to get back into society and be productive as quickly as possible, but all in the essence and in the goal of higher education or education to our currently and formerly incarcerated individuals. So thank you, Emily, for sharing that. Thank you for pushing for that program. And I can't wait to hear more about the growth that you guys are achieving in that state. Anybody else would like to share? And the agenda has been placed in the chat. So if you want to take a few minutes to look through it, I'll take one more person if they want to share who they met and what wonderful work is being done in their community. And then we can go on to our guest speaker. Don't be shy now, guys. All right. Well, I know you guys are just here for our guest speaker. I understand that. So we're going to move on then to our guest speaker for today. I'm super excited to introduce Patrick. You are on mute if you're speaking to us, but right now, Patrick Rodriguez, super excited to introduce him for this month's guest speaker. He serves as the co-executive director of the Georgia Coalition for Higher Education in Prison, and he co-directs the National Executive Council out of Columbia University Center for Justice. He is a busy man. He known as the global thought leader in education access for incarcerated people, reentry solutions, and anti-poverty work. His role in implementing SNAP and cash benefits for incarcerated New Yorkers was a turning point, which has empowered him to work with stakeholders such as government agencies, NGOs, and universities alike. An Obama Foundation Leadership USA Fellow, a Camelback Fellow, and a Fund for New Leadership Fellow. He's been featured in the Jezebel Magazine 40 Under 40, Atlanta's Best Magazine 40 Under 40, and Georgia Trends Magazine's 40 Under 40. And I can go on with other things that I am not going to speak of today because we don't have the time, but Patrick has been such an instrumental power and voice in our community of higher education. Without further ado, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Judith. That's a very kind introduction. Whenever people read my bio, it's not quite shocking to me, but it always brings up something that I kind of want to start with. There's a lot of accolades and things as it relates to 40 under 40 here, 40 under 40 there, Obama Fellowship there, this and that. But I think that I want to start by centering the only way that amongst any other thing that was possible is through the partnerships that I have and also the shoulders that I stand on. It's almost impossible to think that any one of us can do anything by ourselves. It's almost impossible to think that any one of us can single-handedly make the change that we're looking for in this world. And for me, I've been simply nothing but a vessel to be able to work in this space and others. So I'd like to take a moment just to shout out, Judith Negron for inviting me in the Unlock Higher Ed Committee. Some of the shoulders I stand on, Dr. Stanley Andrees has an instrumental work in the prison education space. Sarita Stibe down in New Orleans as well, Dr. Zaria Davis, and also one of my good colleagues and brother in this space, Jay Holder, who have just created not just a platform, but also a space next to them to lead with them and to walk hand in hand. And I think that we see all too often sometimes in spaces where places will get a little bit of vindictive and almost want to push in front of each other and almost like the crabs in the buckets. They're working to get at the top. But the nice thing about the reason why I've been able to move so far in life is because instead of having, I guess, crabs next to me, I have had humans next to me who extend their hand and say, hey, let's move forward together. I also want to take another moment. I've got like 30 minutes here, so we're just going to kind of hang out. You can consider this a live podcast. You can consider this a live TV solo dolo series for about 20 minutes. Judith, make sure to keep me honest on my time. But I also brought a couple of other individuals on this call to keep me honest as well. And I would like to just take a second to shout out somebody who's not, he doesn't really do work in this space, but he was one of my best friends growing up, Jeffrey Ordonez. He was actually the first person to open his doors when I came home from prison and allowed me to stay in his house in Georgia when seemingly nobody else would. So thank you so much for that, Jeff. And again, I brought you on here to keep me honest as well. My baby brother, Eric Rodriguez, was on, but he actually logged off for some reason. So he might have came on and came off if you saw him in the beginning. But I want to shout out my brother, Eric. This year, he actually got a bachelor's degree, so we're very excited about that, especially here in Unlock Higher Ed. He would be an indirectly impacted person, watched his brother go through incarceration and lots of his uncles as well. Shout out to you, Eric, even though you're not on here, but maybe you can watch the recording later. And I want to center that because I think we talk a lot about the individual in terms of my story and what I went through. But what has really helped me since I've come home in 2019 is understanding the impact that what I went through had on other people. And that we can take that and pull in so many different directions about what that means, but I want to kind of stay centered on the family issue and being incarcerated and my brother's kind of watching me go through that. It took a few years before we got to a place where our relationship started to mend and actually come together. And so as people on this call are directly impacted, I just want to encourage you to reach out to your family and to continue to work on that relationship to build and understand that relationships change over time. And as time changes, as we grow, as we get more mature, as we get more educated, the dynamics of relationships, they actually start to change. And so the dynamic of the relationship that I had with my baby brother, who I just shouted out, was the last time I lived with him. I was actually 17 years old, a senior in high school. And I think he was like 10 or 8. And then it wasn't again, I didn't really see him until I came home from all this incarceration stuff. So if you can imagine from 17 to about 29, 30, just being gone and out of his life and just so transparent and not communicating, not reaching out, not being the role model that I should have been or that I could have been. Grateful for where I am today and how I am showing up for not just him, but for others. But I think that it's an integral part as we think about what it is that we are going to do to not just make impact, but what is our legacy and what does that family legacy also look like over due time. And so my story starts kind of interestingly. I don't know if I can share screen. I got a couple videos I want to kind of just jump into, and I want to start with one video that'll, again, I'm just trying to keep myself honest here today. I think you guys can see this. If I'm not mistaken, I'm going to click present. I'm going to click present. You can see this full screen if I'm not mistaken, and I'm gonna, oh, sorry, I pushed the wrong button. And I can put share sound somewhere, share computer sound. I'm gonna put, ooh, let's see if this works. Okay, now tell me if you can hear this.
It was in my lap, shaking like a leaf.
Okay.
My name is Patrick Lee Rodriguez II, and I was born in Lansing, Michigan. I'm 25, and it's time to change. So I'm kind of hoping that this is a point in my life where I can start changing, or I can start doing something different that will hopefully get me someplace different than here. And there's a saying in 12-step, it works if you work it, but you got to work it every day.
You all saw that I basically said that it was time for me to change at 25 years old, and I had to start doing something different than I had been doing before. And it works if you work it, but you got to work it every single day. And so I'm going to break this talk into 3 different parts. The first part is going to be my personal story and my challenges with getting into college and back into college. The second is going to be talk a little bit more about professionally the Georgia Coalition for Higher Ed, the South Carolina Coalition, and my work with the National Executive Council. And then lastly, I'm going to do some perspectives on Pell and like looking forward into the future. So my story is it can be a long one. You know, I can make it super long, I can make it super short. But I think the thing is I did go to Kennesaw State University right out of high school. I was 17, got enrolled. I was super young, started off there. I started ensuing challenges in 2000, and I started in 2008. It was about 2010, 11, I started drinking and using drugs, and things started going a little bit awry. I was unable to pay rent back in the day. It was struggling, and I was working at Fifth Third Bank, and it wasn't really a livable wage at $10 an hour. And, you know, part-time 15 hours a week is not really that much in the long run. And so I turned to hanging out with people that maybe didn't have the best intentions at that time. And I turned to not having the best intentions either. So in 2000, this was about 2014, I started getting arrested. I got arrested 6 times. I got arrested in Carroll County. I got arrested in Alabama. I got arrested in Tennessee, and I also got arrested in DeKalb County. And then I got a probation revocation, which led to me going to prison for 10 months. I did 10 months in residential substance abuse treatment here in Georgia. And I remember it was so crazy when I was actually inside of the courtroom, they had subpoenaed Alabama and Tennessee. And so one of the officers actually came from DeKalb County. So all 3 for my revocation, they wanted to pull away my first offender and make me a quote unquote convicted felon. And so I'm standing there, I'm reading this letter, and I'm shaking in this thing. And I'm like, I apologize to the court, and I don't know what to do. And I'm so nervous. I'm still wet behind the ears and green, and I have no experience in this lifetime. And the judge looks at me and he says, you know, look around. He's like, who's here? You know, and he said, the prosecutor there, they tried to summon everybody, and everybody wants you to go to prison for 2 years, Patrick, and everybody wants me to revoke your first offender. And I'm looking at Judge Blackman in Carroll County. I'm in rural Georgia, just to keep that in mind. And I'm standing there, just this Latino person of color or whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what is about to happen here? And he did something that I thought was quite interesting. He paused and he said, you know, I'm not sure why, but everybody wants me to do one thing, and I'm not going to do what everybody wants me to do. I can't say whether or not you're dealing drugs for a fact. I can't say whether or not that I think you're just causing havoc in the world. That's not what's in front of me. But what I can say, Mr. Rodriguez, is you have been arrested on drug offenses. You have been arrested on public intoxication multiple times. So I think I can say that you might have a drug problem. You might have a challenge. And I don't think that that's actually a stretch for me. And so I'm looking at him and I'm thinking to myself, well, what's about to happen? He's like, so I'm sentencing you to 10 months to residential substance abuse treatment. And so I go down the road, I go for 10 months, but he gave me an opportunity to keep my first offender, which was interesting. I didn't expect it and I didn't ask for it because I didn't even know what that meant at that time. So I did 10 months, I got sober, everything was fine. I came home in August in 2015. And a part of my story is I actually kind of went right back into the activities that were beforehand when I came home because I needed to make money. And here's the crazy part of the story that I think I don't tell all too often. On June 1st of 2023, or no, June 1st of 2026 or 2016. I'm sorry, I'm getting my years mixed up. In 2016, when I came home on June 1st, I immediately started using drugs again. The first day after I talked to my probation officer and I said, hey, am I off of papers now? And they said yes. And unfortunately, some of my friends back then were at the house waiting with some cocaine and some alcohol, and we indulged for the evening. 22 days later, on June 23rd of 2016, I was arrested on drug trafficking, possession with intent, simple possession, and another simple possession on 5 charges. And little did I know that my entire life was going to change. I didn't understand what it meant, but I remember the cop door closing. And when the cop door closed, I can still see it right now. It was a black SUV. It wasn't a normal car because I had a few of the federal agencies and the ABC letters that try to get you DEA, CIA, LMNO, PQRST, whatever they are, all those agents, they want to get you and take you down and stuff at that time. And I remember closing that door and I thought to myself, like, nothing is ever going to be the same. I don't know exactly what's going to happen to me, but here we go. So time goes by, all those things, prison, all this stuff. I get a sentence, 10 years with 7 to serve in confinement. I come home. I come home in 2019. And in 2019, December of 2019, I came home and I moved in with the gentleman I shouted out earlier. Jeff Ordonez opened up some space for me. And that was the first person that provided an opportunity and opened their door for me and provided some support. And I thought to myself, well, I got one step, I can do this. And then next thing you know, I'm continuing on. I want to go to college. And I meet this group of individuals on this call called the Georgia Coalition for Higher Education in Prison, is what they were calling themselves in 2020. And then next thing you know, I meet this individual. His name was Jay. His name was Jay Holder. And I thought to myself, huh. And he was like, hey, come hang out. I'm like, okay, sure. Let's hang out. I don't know what this means, but let's do this. Let's talk about prison and education. And I was like, okay, cool. All we did was talk about prison education. But during that time, what I understood was that the tangentialness that existed between me wanting to go to college and me actually going to college and the support that was encompassed by the group of people that were directly impacted and non-directly impacted that supported prison education was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me in my entire life in 2020 during the COVID. And I want to share just a couple of things, which is what gets me fired up and what got me fired up initially. The first thing is even though you guys are not going to super be able to see this, but you can see Kennesaw State University. This is the letter that I received stating that I had said that I had crimes on my record. It's a long letter. I had to turn over all this different paperwork, etc. I had to answer all these questions. It's just like a lot of stuff, right? So then I had to go and begin gathering documents. Fulton County Sheriff's Office, my Georgia criminal history report. This is not just one page. This is, as you can see, it's a few different pages, all the crimes that I had committed. And so Kennesaw State was beginning to inquire, but if you remember correctly, I went to school in 2008 to Kennesaw State the first time. I never had to answer a question about my past in 2008. Nothing about my character. I just turned over my transcript, etc. And when I turned over my transcript, they made a decision and they accepted me. But now I was going back to school as a student who had just had troubles with the law. And so a part of this process was not just getting my final disposition, was not just getting my court records, was not just this part, but it was also writing an explanatory essay, not the 250 or 300 word box. the 250, 300 word box led to the essay. And this is the prompt. I would like to read it to you because I have these 13 pages right here with me. I keep it with me all the time as just a reminder. Provide a personal statement with including a detailed description of the circumstances of your cases listed above. Describe in detail what happened, where were you, who were you with, and what did you learn from the overall experience? On that day, I was driving on I-20 West from Atlanta to Birmingham, Alabama, to go to my friend Kevin's birthday party. I was with my girlfriend at the time, Ariel. I started speeding and I maneuvered between three cars quickly, and this triggered the officer that was on the highway to pull me over. After I was pulled over, I was asked all the questions pertaining to my driving maneuver, and then I was told to hold on for a moment. Shortly after the officers pulled up, I was then asked if I had any drugs in the car. I said no. The officer then asked if I consented to the search, and I allowed him to because I didn't understand what my rights were back at that time. At this time in my life, I was using marijuana and consuming alcohol and Molly. At this specific incident, I was not under the influence, but it is an example of how I was unable to get a grip on my actions. I was then arrested for the charges above and taken to jail for the first time in my life. I very clearly remember curling up underneath the bed and crying because I didn't know what was happening to me. It was my first realizations that things in my life were going wrong. That's the first two paragraphs to the essay that I wrote so that I could obtain or go back to school to try to do right, to continue my life in the way that it was. So things continued on. The page is long, and we only have about 15 minutes left until 45. But I share this with you because I'm not the only person who's going through this. I'm not the only person who has been through this. And I'm on a call here where the intention of Unlock Higher Ed is to create it and make it open pathways. Imagine sitting there. I was sitting in Jeff's, he's on the call, in his room in a tiny little twin-sized bed. I'm writing this thing up and I'm typing it. And I'm like, I can do it. I can make it. And focusing with all my energy to be able to continue my education. And at that time, it wasn't just Jeff, but it was also Jay, it was Dr. Thomas Fabizak, and it was others that encompassed me with a focus and a vision of how can we make prison education more, while simultaneously volunteering at that time with the coalition to say, hey, we can do this. I'm going through this, but I can help other people by sharing my experience with them and what I'm going through to try to help them navigate the system in a way that works. And so things go on all excitingly and all this other stuff. And so I'm going to be a little cheesy, so don't hate me, but I'm actually kind of excited to go to this next moment before I jump into coalition building. So I'm going to go off camera for 1 second and then I'll come back on. So excitingly, years later, I think this was in 2000 and I don't even remember what year, 2022. So if you remember, I was writing this essay in 2020. In 2022, I actually finished my degree. I got a degree, it says from Kennesaw State University, and I got the hat and stuff. You know, I keep it with me all the time. I'm at my house currently, so I'm not like on vacation with my hat or something like that. But I wanted to share this with you because I think we continue to celebrate each other, and also the things that we go through to be able to do this. And that was one of my biggest goals. In 2008, I started college. It took me 14 years until 2022 to finish. So I don't want to hear anybody say that it's too late or I can't do it. It takes too long. I took 14 years and I'm only 33. It took me half of my life to get that damn bachelor's degree, which I owe a whole bunch of money after my student loans, which we're not going to get into today. But I also want to shout out Jay Holder, who got his master's from Columbia University. Actually this year, Abigail Cook, who got her bachelor's from Georgia State University, starting her master's this year. Karima Hanifa, who also got her bachelor's from Life University, is in the midst of her master's degree program, and so many other justice-involved people that are just working to make their lives better, to impact their community in a positive way. And so thank you for letting me share that part. That is the crux, and that is the essence of what everything spawns from or spans from as it relates to the work that I do here inside of prison education and beyond, et cetera. Let me see if I can find this quote real quick. I thought this was kind of nice. Might take me a second, but I think we've got some time. Give me 1 second. Okay. This is Octavio Paz. He's a writer type of person. And I'm kind of going to change his quote up a little bit, but I think it's beautiful when we start to find our purpose in life. People recognize themselves in works of art because the works of art offer them images of the hidden totality. I consider prison education a work of art. And so there are times when we do this work, whether it's prison ed, coalition building, whether it's policy work, where we see reflections of ourselves and they start to build on what I like to call our purpose in life. And you continue to do it. You volunteer, you push to network, you push to grow, not from a place of financial gains, but from a place of just moral excitement of like, wow, this is what I was really meant to do. And so me as a person, from what I just shared with you, and as I do this work, I see glimmers of the artwork reflected back to myself, and I'm taking it in. And there are moments just like this moment where I think to myself, out of all the choices I made in my life, I'm supposed to be exactly right here, right now, with every single one of you. And it's the same exact thing that I will share with you as well. And so, as I work to get my bachelor's degree and as I work to continue to impact prison education, et cetera, I was nominated amongst the peers who were a part of the coalition to become the co-executive director of the Georgia Coalition for Higher Education in December of 2020. I was 29 years old. It was before my 30th birthday. And I was super excited, but I was also so nervous. I was like, executive, I don't even know what this means. Like, what does executive mean? I've never really been a quote unquote executive or something. I don't know. But instead of thinking and curling up away from it, I had individuals, such as Jay and Thomas and others say, you can do it. You have the qualities. You are here. All you have to do is just hone in and sharpen some skills, and it's just going to keep on taking off from there. We formed as a 501c3 on February 8th of 2021. Coincidentally, exactly on my birthday. My birthday is February 8th. I turned 30 in 2021. I can't make this up. And I actually have the paperwork where the Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, signed it on February to say this is now a 501c3, and the letter was received. And so we were super excited about that. And again, just another glimmer of that artwork shining back, saying this is exactly what you're supposed to do, this moment here. And I think the reason why I like to, and I'm glad I found this quote, is, when we think about art, sometimes you think you have a plan. I don't know, maybe you've ever heard this before. Sometimes you think you're supposed to use ink, you're supposed to use paint, you're supposed to use acrylic, you're supposed to use oil, you're supposed to use crayon, you're supposed to use colored pencil, and you start drawing and you think you understand what you're supposed to do, but you forget that the canvas is bigger than you can even see. It's behind you, it's in front of you. It's not one dimensional, it's three-dimensional, four-dimensional. It's absolutely everything. And so these moments just keep on spiking at me and shining and thinking, wow, this is what I'm supposed to do. So as your life continues, I encourage you to look for these moments that you have gone through, to be able to push to focus on those things and continue to build and grow. So we as a coalition are super excited. Remember, we started in 2021, just as stated, but we started meeting in 2018, actually when Jay met Thomas up in at the Alliance for Higher Education National Conference. Thomas was standing next to Jay, and Thomas was like, I don't know exactly how the story goes, but basically they had a serendipitous moment. I think that is a great way to put it. And they ended up bringing the coalition to fruition over time. And then Thomas and I were selected to co-lead the coalition. And so since then, we have excitedly raised north of $3.5 million since 2021 in our inception. And that money goes towards a few different things. One of our biggest programs is we have pre-college programs, math, reading, writing, to prepare students to actually take the AccuPlacer. And then we also have a reentry division, reentry program. Excitingly, we have Danny Rivera, our reentry coordinator, and we're hiring somebody down in Central Georgia as we work to create and to expand out wide. They're going to be working with Central Georgia Technical College. But I think the thing that I want to say about Georgia as a final thought, because I'm watching my time here, I'm going to have to speed up a little bit. But as a final thought, we've come together and we've seen leadership and partnership between non-directly impacted and impacted people. I'm directly impacted. Thomas is non-directly impacted. Our board our co-presidents. One is directly impacted, Pamela Wynn, and Liz Bounds is not directly impacted. And that collaboration has really fostered a place of growth and progress. And to continue with the work that I do with the National Executive Council and Jay Holder at Columbia and to co-direct that, we work to establish the South Carolina Coalition for Higher Education in Prison. And excitingly, South Carolina is the state with the largest number of incarcerated students attending a PEP program through an HBCU anywhere in the nation. And so we're excited to continue to collaborate and work with HBCUs such as UHE's, such as Benedict College, such as Claflin and others, to continue to work with them to expand their offerings. And I want to shout out Dr. Vanessa Harris, whom I co-chair the South Carolina Coalition for Higher Education in Prison. We have some exciting news coming out soon, so stay tuned to keep up with them. I believe South Carolina is definitely on the rise. And so, you know, I'm at 40 and I want to possibly answer some time for some questions. So I'm going to zoom again. You know, when I think about perspectives of Pell, I could probably go for 2 hours. This is like really kind of the nitty gritty, but I'm going to make it very simple. We have had applications open for Pell for 365 days now. We're going into August. It was re-implemented in July of 2023. And so there's so many statistics. I know Sheila could jump on and kind of spit all those statistics out of how many schools, et cetera. But I think that we at Unlock Higher Ed need to think not just about the application process of students being able to get in, but how do we unlock other opportunities such as internal state funding, tuitions and scholarships that are available that can supplement outside of just Pell Grants? How do we begin tapping into local funders? We've seen a large influx from national funders into higher education in prison, but what does it look like more on a state level and individually to some of those foundations? And then also when I think about it is where are we going with this next? We see the modality and the delivery with face-to-face, which has a very large impact, but we're also seeing a large technological gap as it relates to people being able to navigate technology, learning management systems, understanding what generative artificial intelligence is doing with the world right now and all those different things. And so I just want to encourage everybody as I think about, as I title this last section of mine, Perspectives of Pell, I want to think about everybody to not think about the perspective of today, but to think about the perspective of 2030, 2040, because this work is going to continue. We are going to continue. And so how do we begin creating not just a policy agenda, but also collaborations and also internal policy changes to support students for the long run as we think about, you know, what prison education, what Pell, what federal grants look like, you know, later on. I know, and one thing I want to lift up, I was just reading about this the other day, the incarcerated students being able to get out of default with their loans. If you are working with a program, please communicate with not just your students, but with other other incarcerated people that there's a potential to get out of default. I myself was actually in default when I went to prison. I wrote a letter to the Department of Education and I did not receive a response, which equated into a lot of interest later on because it started building up and I was not able to do a deferment, which is kind of, I fell victim to that personally. So it's a little bit close to my heart just to remind people who do work with programs on this call to do so. But I think we are at time for questions here, Judith, if there's any in the chat or something like that, if you want to come off mute. And I'll drop my information in the chat as well, just so everybody can have it if they want to reach out to talk on another platform.
So if you have any questions, you can just raise your hand and provide them. We have a few minutes for questions for Patrick.
And I know like 21 out of 26 of you guys. So like, if you don't ask me a question, I will be texting you after this. So I'm going to go and pause after just making that statement.
Well, I think you were so thorough. Probably you answered all of their questions, but one of the things I did like, you know, the highlighting of the PEP programs and how it's, you know, it is today as opposed to how it was before. And you mentioned that Sheila can definitely speak about that. And I want to give Sheila a couple of minutes to address that as well, real quick, if we can, because one of the things that we are working on as a coalition is just that, is figuring out what's going on and why are these PEP programs have not been implemented the way that it was intended or as quickly as it should have been. You mentioned 365 days, and here we are where we're at. So Sheila can definitely discuss that part. So I'll bring it to her and her expertise with that as well.
Sure. Thanks, Judith. And thanks, Patrick. I've known you a long time and I've heard you speak well, but it always amazes me how perfectly from the heart you speak, and I appreciate that. Anyway, yeah, there are a few programs that have been approved. I know of at least 4 right now, so we're making some progress. There are a lot in the pipeline. From an unlock perspective, what we're engaging in this summer is conversations about the fact that the barrier to entry has been difficult for programs that want to be approved. And the end result of that difficulty in the bureaucracy is that way fewer people inside are being served by Harrier than should be, given we are now 14 months after the beginning of the implementation. And that's a problem. Some of the problems are lack of clarity in process. When you don't have a rubric that tells you how the department would make a decision about whether a program is okay or not, it's very hard to meet a rubric when you don't know what it is. As an old professor, it's not fair if I grade you if I don't tell you what my rubric is and how I'm going to make that decision. So that's a gap in the way the process is being managed. And the systems and processes within the department, which have been retrofitted tremendously over the past year, have had technical problems, to be blunt, and PEP applications have been slowed down by that. And there's also a very complex process that's been set up in general that requires serial approvals. When you do work in parallel, you can be more quick in the work, but the process is designed serially. You must get a Department of Corrections approval. Then you must start into your accreditor approval. Then you must start with the Department of Education approval. So rather than being 3 parallel strands, we're talking serial strands, which adds greatly because each of those organizations are their own large bureaucracy and are not speedy. I'm going to be political, Judith, as I say that, because Judith has heard me say it differently. Probably Patrick has too. Probably most of you have. Anyway, but the bottom line is there's just not a good feeling that there's oversight, communications, and understanding how this approval process works behind the scenes, and it's preventing people from engaging in education.
Thank you for that. And this is why one of the letters that we're sending out to our membership is to reach out to your legislators, reach out to your Congress people and ask them what's going on, what are the delays, because most of them may not even be aware that this is going on or these impediments are happening. So we just want to increase awareness so that we can push the process forward.
Hey,
I
Judith,
have a couple of people also with their hands up. I have
hey,
lots.
Judith, can I just add 20 seconds to that point right there? The other thing too is like with the coalitions, one of our partners is corrections, and we have multiple corrections partners, and none of them are really thrilled about the responsibility that the Department of Education has put on them. They don't have the infrastructure to run college. A lot of them don't have any history. And then they're internally relying on whoever the person is that probably has a PhD who runs their GED stuff, and they don't know anything about prison education. And then the last part is they put this barrier on corrections, and then there's no funding for corrections to even hire somebody to actually do this work. So it's a really, really nightmare. It was just like, there was so much abuse being done in 1994, with the predatory institutions. And sometimes when things go so far left, you got to do all of this extra stuff to get right. And I know we all thrilled about Pell being reinstated, right? But putting all of that responsibility on the correction was not a good idea, and we're seeing the impact of it.
Thank you for that. And you're absolutely right. When it has many stakeholders in this game, if we don't have the conditions and probabilities, just makes the process harder to be achieved. Laji?
Hey, I had a question for Patrick. So I understand that college is new and we're having men and women coming out with degrees, but I'm seeing that a lot of them are struggling to get employment with their degrees. And I'm just wondering, have you or have you been in touch with any organizations on how to create opportunities for individuals that have degrees?
This is directed to me. Yes. Hey, Elijah. Hey, how are you?
Yes.
I hope
Hey.
you're doing well. And yes, most definitely. I think right now we're really honing in and focusing on increasing the the brevity of to which we are serving. So one, we have partnerships with the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. We also have partnerships with the City of Refuge and also CEO Works, which could get somebody employed rather quickly. And then also, you're over at the Department of Behavioral Health, and you've been doing such amazing work as well, to which our partnership exists too. And so I think that there are multiple challenges that exist to employing people whenever they come home, not just from incarceration, but also in general. And I think the best thing that we can continue to do is create community and collaboration, and also start leaning a little bit more into second chance. I guess it's like second chance friendly employers. I don't like the word second chance, but that is kind of what's being used. Employers that are open to hiring people with convictions and records, and not just leaning on like Home Depot as the only answer for that in particular. And I think sometimes one thing that I have noticed is system impacted people sometimes have a challenge recognizing the skill set that they have. So they don't even realize that what they're doing is project management, or what they did while they were incarcerated was project management. Or somebody that is an administrator doesn't even realizing they were doing administrative work at a high capacity level because they were assisting the front office with the audits to making sure that everybody was where they were going over the count sheets and stuff like that. Those are very high level administrative skills that we forget to, or we sometimes have a difficult time conveying to outside employers. And so I think as we continue to grow as a coalition, we're going to continue to embed strategies on discussing some of the not just lived experience in terms of going through prison and it being tough, but strategies of employing your lived experience that you went to and turning that into professional excellence. Because a lot of system impacted people have a lot of professional excellence that they just might not have the wording or how to put it towards to make them more employable for the future. And I think that's sometimes where that stopgap actually exists.
And I'm going to add a couple of things on that. One, and I'm glad that you mentioned that about, how you get your skill set on paper. One of the programs that JFF is working on, I think it's called Talent Nova, and it's a platform to creating a resume that is in lines with sometimes we don't even know or realize our skill set. So it helps you create that, seeing it from a different perspective. That's number one. And number two is I also want to highlight the Ladies of Hope Ministries. They're having a business roundtable coming up, and the discussions are particularly that when you get your degrees, or when you have your degrees, then how do you get employed in an equitable level employment that is defined or in line with your expertise, your skill set, and even your degree? Because what we're finding is that we're also having, individuals are coming with JDs, MDs, PhDs, and, all levels of education, and they're really having a hard time getting employed at a level that they deserve based on their skill and even their experience. And so we're trying to tap into those industries and those community businesses to let them know this is what can happen when you give opportunities based on their skill, based on their experience, and not based on their record or their past.
Right.
So I urge you, and the link is on the agenda. I urge you to be part of that panel discussion, because we are now highlighting the success stories that come from different industries when people are given opportunities, such as Dr. Andres in the academia and sciences part of the industry sector.
Yeah, so Judith, just to add on, so everybody in the field could think about, there's a lot of government jobs that especially formerly incarcerated scholars, people with at least an associate's degree, can get, back when, Patrick talked earlier about this SNAP and cash benefit thing that we worked out with the New York City Department of Social Services, which is the largest social service agency inside the country. But nonetheless, we've created a pathways for professionals with them, and they have begun to hire a bunch of our scholars. Like they got 3,000 jobs that they can't fill, and they never even thought about tapping inside to the permanently incarcerated population. So we started even doing outreach before people was released, and then we was able to sit down with the leadership at this particular agency, and they start to look at all of the jobs that people have inside of prison, and they use those job descriptions, paired them, looked at them side by side, and they accepting those things. So if somebody was inside there teaching or doing something inside of prison, they accept that stuff. So now when you come out with the college degree, you got the work history as well. So that's so when y'all looking at your different localities, the social services, especially the social services, those are the city jobs that formerly incarcerated scholars can actually get.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Mancy, I know you've had your hands up for a minute. Mancy, you're on mute. If you had a question?
Hey Patrick, can you drop my email? Jay, hold that Columbia inside there for anybody. Thanks.
Okay, I think we lost Mancy in the process of answering his question. Hopefully, if he rejoins, we can answer that question. But again, I just want to address that, ultimately, we are going through education for the purpose of getting a degree, for the purpose of getting a better employment opportunity. So our work doesn't just stop there. Our work now starts on opening those opportunities and for individuals to have that opportunity that is in line with their skill set. Eugene, you have a question?
Yes, and pardon my camera. I wanted to ask Patrick, I heard him talk about and articulate very well his resilience as he was going through his process. We see the finished product and see how fantastic he is and that he was able to accomplish that. But what I wanted to know is what was it exactly that allowed you to keep going even though you were getting setback after setback?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's a great question. That's a tough question to answer. I do believe in God first and foremost above all things. I can't shy away from that by any means, and kind of his strength and guidance over the years. But also, I just got kind of sick and tired of being sick and tired. I know you have heard that one before. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired and waking up every day. And I actually have my ID, my prison ID right here. So you can see I'm kind of have a bald head, and here's another version of myself with a little bit of a beard, and then here's another version of myself, and I looked at myself in the mirror and I just kept thinking to myself, that's just not me. That's just not who I am. This is not who I'm supposed to be. And I didn't know I was going to be here. Eugene, I had no idea that I was going to end up in this space, that I was going to lead in the way that I've been leading and all those different things. And everything just kind of happened one thing after the other. And I continued to lean into the support that I had around me. And I think that's what's carried me the farthest. And also just having an instinct and a drive. And sometimes you just got to wake up and you got to do it. Sometimes when you feel sick, sometimes when you don't feel good, sometimes when nobody's encouraging you. It's not every single day we get encouragement, but you just wake up and you keep pushing, and you know that there's going to be something on the other side. And that's really what that on top of some other things kind of kept me going. So thank you for the question.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I'm going to real quick pivot to Jessica. I know she wanted to also let you guys know about some possibilities when it comes to mentorship and going through this process of resiliency from education to job placement.
Thanks so much for letting me jump in here at the end. Patrick, thank you so much for sharing with us. Those were some great questions too. Many of you know me, I'm Jess. Many of you know me from P2P and Flickshop, but I'm here hopping on today to chat with you a little bit about our resilience education professional community. We are gearing up for our next mentorship cohort, and we know that there are some fantastic mentorship programs represented within this call and definitely within this space, where resilience comes in with just a little bit of a different facet of mentorship is that we pair those of us impacted by the system with a professional in their field of interest or industry or topic. So if you have someone in your network that wants to be an entrepreneur, we pair you with a successful entrepreneur to help you and meet you exactly where you are in your career journey. If you are looking to pursue a career in finance, or even just looking to learn more about how to save for retirement and the difference between a 401k and a Roth and those complicated questions that arise sometimes with planning, then we pair you with a financial expert in the industry, pulling from a vast network of resources across the country and professionals that we screen heavily to offer really high quality, again, mentorship with almost a blur into like executive coaching. So I wanted to mention that. I'm going to drop some links in the chat just in case you're looking for, some professional guidance from executives in the industry in your own journey, or if you know folks who are still working their way through their own professional journey who could use a mind along their career path that could help them. So I'm going to drop some links. Feel free to reach out to me, but more later. Thanks for letting me pop in, Judith.
No problem. And again, and this is all about collaborations. This is all about how we can support individuals that are interested on the pathway of education, which ultimately leads to a career pathway, right? And so this is why we bring together all of these experts in our community to speak about that. And I'm just so excited that Patrick had the time and a willingness to come and speak in this platform today. I know we didn't have a chance to go over our subcommittee's work, but if you're interested in joining any of our subcommittee works, I mean, they're great in doing the work that they're doing. We are planning on digital equity, topics regarding Digital Equity Act. We're planning on topics regarding the PEP programs and oversight. So there's much work that is being done in this community. So if you're interested, please join one of our state and federal subcommittees. I've also had a couple of links on the chat as well. If you look, we are coming up on the Rise Up conference. So I urge you, if you have not joined, if you're not registered, please, this is a conversation where many professionals in the field will come together to speak about not only their stories, but best practices and how we can further education and access to. There's also a PDC reentry conference that we will be attending in October. That it's Palm Beach County in Florida. If you're interested on that, we'll put that link on the chat. And finally, there is a webinar happening with Vera offering prison education programs that are interested at the federal level. I urge you to Zoom onto that webinar. Again, thank you for being in this space. Thank you for sharing your information, your knowledge. We appreciate that. And if you're interested in being a speaker in our future monthly speaking series, I urge you to also reach out to us and let us know that you're interested in doing so. We're, again, always looking for those experts in the field so that we can learn and move forward with best practices in our local communities. Thank you guys for joining us. This concludes today's session. And again, Patrick, thank you so much. And I love that diploma and congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Resiliency is definitely something that should be considered at all levels.